Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. A self-evident expression that was coined and championed by French philosopher René Descartes in the early 17th century at the height of the Renaissance, and would become foundational to the progression of the Enlightenment a century later. It's a simple expression dense with meaning, most notably, the understanding of human beings not just as intellectuals, but self-aware of that intellect, with the capacity to continue expanding their knowledge. We can not only think, we could think about our thinking. Fast forward a couple centuries, we are still just as fascinated with the human brain, although now much of the research includes electrodes and brain scans. What began as philosophical musings about the state of the human brain has morphed into neurological suppositions, and often no closer to a definitive understanding of how our brain works. We think we know, then we realize what we thought we knew is not actually what we knew. It's complicated. However, researchers at the University of Maryland School of Medicine have begun doing research into not just how we think, but how we think about thinking, called metacognition. And they've been doing it since before it was cool. They're like hipster neurologists. And not to be outdone, some researchers from the Journal of Experimental Psychology are taking the concept of metacognition and extending it to not just how we think, but how we remember. And they call this metamemory. And while memory research has a long institutional memory, metamemory does not. And in fact, the results are striking. So, to make sure you remember what we talk about today, I will tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then tell you what I told you. By first, reviewing the background, revisiting some applications, and revising the implications. Nate Cornell of Williams College stated in Smithsonian Magazine, January 13, 2017, "If I wasn't a respectable, distinguished gentleman, I would use curse words to describe these results." Well, first, before we can think about how our metamemory works, we must begin by understanding the principle of metacognition. Dr. Nancy Chick, the assistant director for the Center of Teaching at Vanderbilt University, states that metacognition is, put simply, thinking about one's thinking. More precisely, it refers to the processor used to plan, monitor, and assess one's understanding and performance. Think about it this way. If I tell you to think about a moose riding a lawnmower, you now have the image in your mind of said moose riding said lawnmower. If we take a step back and realize that that thought in and of itself is a ridiculous thought, and we begin asking ourselves how it was we came to think about that in the first place, you are now employing your metacognition. Metacognition includes a critical awareness of your ability to think and learn while also reflecting upon yourself as a thinker and learner. Dr. Victoria Templer, an assistant professor at Providence College, July 28, 2017, elucidates. Say you're going over to a friend's house for a party, and you ask yourself, do I know how to get there? Metamemory is what allows your brain to say, yes, I remember the way, or no, I'd better check Google Maps. Much like metacognition, where you think about thinking, now you are remembering your memory. Metamemory is not just your ability to recall information or past experiences. More specifically, it is the ability to recall that you have access or even lack of access to memory in the first place. Let's imagine you walk down the street and you see someone you recognize. You know them, but you just can't place a name or how you know them. That's metamemory. Or when you're trying to recall that one movie about that one girl who does that thing, as soon as your friend says Mean Girls, you realize you knew it the whole time. You just didn't have access to it. Or when the name of that ancient Chinese general who said that one thing you really want to use in your final impromptu example is just out of reach. We've all experienced a metamemory moment. Now that we've explored how metamemory works, we'll discuss how it currently is being applied. Two applications stand out: education and Alzheimer's research. Sun Tzu! That's who it was. Anyway, on to education. Metamemory is changing the way that we teach our students by helping us recognize that there is a metamemory gap between what we know and what we think we know. A study by Dr. Cornell and Dr. Finn in 2016 had participants learn vocab words based on synonyms of Gree words, or words commonly used in speaking. The pair discovered that metamemory can be used to sort out things that have already been learned. This is obvious. However, they also learned that working on the easiest work first and moving up to the hard work made the task much easier for people to accomplish. This study shows the link from metamemory to adaptive studying and is commonly used in learning difficult material. Experience by Christine Denny at Columbia University and colleagues, July 29, 2017. Genetically engineered mice with neurons that glow yellow when learning and glow red when remembering. They created 2 sets of these mice, one set healthy, and the other with a condition resembling human Alzheimer's disease. Both sets were exposed to a lemon scent and then given an electric shock. A week later, they were exposed to the same lemon scent. The set with mice with Alzheimer's flinched half as often as the healthy mice, suggesting they didn't remember the link between the lemon and the shock. Not surprising since they had mice with Alzheimer's. Then, using a technique called optogenetics, the team shined a blue laser down a fiber optic cable into the mice's brains, stimulating their neural pathways. After this technique was performed, the Alzheimer mice suddenly reacted to the lemon scent once again. This experiment, coupled with research into metamemory, suggests that Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia may not destroy memories as previously hypothesized, but instead impairs access, bringing scientists one step closer to a cure. Which leads us directly into some revolutionary implications, both in mental health and in social history. First, and most obviously, metamemory could change the game for Alzheimer's research, as well as research into many mental health conditions. Traditionally, we conceptualized memory and the brain as a giant search engine where all ideas are stored, each memory being equally accessible, all by hitting search. However, memories and the access to those memories is much more like a map. The places or memories are all there, but some may be harder to access because roads are small, unpaved, or blocked by debris. And other places are easier to access because there's a well-constructed road with signs. As Nick Stockton of Wired explains July 19, 2017, your brain doesn't contain memories. It is memories. Metamemory research is the first step in helping to repave the overgrown neural pathways in our brain, revolutionizing not just dementia research, but how to think about researching dementia. Finally, and most broadly, metamemory explains that our memories are significantly constructed and reconstructed every time they're recollected. If we translate this to all of humanity, how we understand and reflect upon the past, especially important historical events, is a recreated social construct. Not to give credit to the cynics and nihilists, but nothing matters, and our past is only as good as our memory. Today, we watched a memorized speech about memory. Ironic. And if memory serves, we covered the background, current research, and implications of a theory so meta, they had to put it in the name. We've come a long way since the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, but we also have a long way to go before we fully understand the depths to our neurology. So until then, cogito, ergo, sum.